A bomb explosion often destroys the evidence of where and how the explosive was made. But microscopic elements do survive. These tiny fragments often tell a story and sometimes can identify the perpetrator. It was clear that the perpetrator was someone who had access to the house.
Kurt Simon could have placed the bomb in the foyer prior to Kim coming in.
By going in the house first, he could have taken something out of a suitcase and set it on the floor and walked back out. Could have.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. You're thinking I had something to do with this?
Kurt was unable to provide any information about the bombing because he said he didn't see anything suspicious.
The next thing I remembered was being grabbed by a couple of police officers, handcuffed, pulled to the front of the house, and paraded in front of this crowd of people into a police car.
Kurt had his own suspicions about who killed his fiancée. He pointed the finger at Kim's mother, Cricket.
If you take every kind of evil, roll it up into a ball, there you have Cricket Lewis. Cricket was just depraved and evil, terribly, terribly self-centered. What I do know is, does Cricket have the capabilities and the depravity to do something like that? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Cricket, hope I'm not shot for this, but I mean, Cricket made her money on her back. I mean, yes, she had a bar, but I think that the bar that she had was bought from the inheritance of an old lady that she took care of, that of course died under her care.
Investigators had suspects. All they needed now was some hard evidence. 29-year-old Kim Wanger was killed when a pipe bomb exploded in her Bloomington, Illinois home. Kim was divorced with 2 children and worked both as a hairdresser and occasionally a house cleaner.
It was creepy because here's this decent person who has not done anything to deserve anything like this, murdered in a very heinous way.
She's the type that she would sit down with a bowl of popcorn and a soda and watch a good scary movie. That was her Saturday night. She loved it. She was so much fun. And yes, I miss her terribly.
At the time of her death, Kim was engaged to Kurt Simon, a Presbyterian minister who was now a suspect in her murder.
Just the thought that somebody would kill her.
Fragments were recovered. Investigators found some distinctive features. The explosive charge had been wrapped with metal ball bearings, or BBs, which increased its killing power.
When the bomb explodes, they'll be traveling at a very high rate of speed. There'll be several hundred pieces of either metal or, in this case, metal and BBs would be projected towards its intended victim.
Gas chromatography testing revealed that 2 different types of gunpowder had been used. We won't reveal the specific components except to say there may have been a motive for the mixture.
It would create a more powerful explosion, yes.
The sheer power of the device indicated that Kim's fiancé, Kurt, may have been a target as well.
This bomb was strong enough to kill several people. I do believe that Kim was the intended target, but I also believe that had I been standing in the room and killed by this thing, that would have just been considered a bonus.
Investigators didn't think Kurt knew how to build a bomb, let alone one with a motion sensor device and so much power.
One of the end caps had 2 holes drilled in it, which was very unique. At the time of my evaluation of the evidence, there were more than a handful of pipe bombs involving an end cap with multiple holes drilled in over 20,000 entries in our database. So it made it very unique.
I don't think Kurt Simon could make a bomb if his life depended on it.
For the same reason, Kim's mother, Cricket, was eliminated as a suspect.
We didn't feel she had the ability, the mentality to build such a device. I think she was preoccupied by her own personal problems.
The next logical suspect was Kim's ex-husband, Paul. He lived only 2 miles away, and he knew Kim's schedule because they shared custody of their daughter.
Anytime someone's divorced, you're going to look and see who would have the motive, who would be motivated to hurt someone else. What's the past history there?
There was a little dispute as far as custody and some support that was being given to Kim financially. So there was a potential there for a motive.
Paul said he was with his friends and daughter for the entire weekend, and they all corroborated his alibi. Next, investigators learned that one of Kim's former co-workers, Phil Hartman, may have had a motive. Kim had filed a sexual harassment complaint against Hartman, alleging that he continued to make sexual advances towards her even after management ordered him to stop. Hartman was fired and promised to get even.
He did make some statements about, I'll get you for this, I'll get back at you, something like that. So he became a person of interest right away.
But Hartman was in another state when Kem was murdered, and he had an airtight alibi.
He was actually working at the time of the explosion, and he had several witnesses, several people who could testify to the fact that he was there, not in the area, had not left the area for several months.
Now investigators were baffled and realized they would have to look deeper to find out who wanted Kem Wanger and Kurt Simon dead.
I would characterize this as one of the coldest, calculated murders that I've ever been involved with.
In the search for Kem Wanger's killer, investigators had one last suspect to interview, Dale Fosdick, a former boyfriend and the father of Kem's youngest child.
The relationship between Dale and Kim seemed to be fraught with acrimony. There was disputes over child visitation and child support.
Friends said that Fosdick didn't always behave as a responsible father. He often failed to pay child support, and when he did, it was usually late.
It just got crazy. She couldn't get a hold of him for days at a time. He wouldn't acknowledge her. He wouldn't answer her phone calls.
Kurt Simon had offered to adopt the child in order to provide a stable home life.
If he's finding having a son to be a real nuisance, if he's not wanting to take care of him, if he's not wanting to be part of his life, let me do it. I'll do it with open arms and be more than happy to do it.
Investigators discovered that this made Fosdick angry.
Dale starts getting pushed out of Kimberly Wanger's life, and he has to sit there and watch her new love, or imagine her new love, while he's being pushed aside and living in his lonely little apartment on the east side of Bloomington.
Also suspicious, Fosdick worked as a machinist at a nearby Caterpillar plant. Obviously, he was mechanically inclined.
He had some electrical skills. He was an airplane model hobbyist. He put together model airplanes from scratch, including the engine.
Armed with a warrant, investigators searched Fosdick's home. And in the basement was every possible component to make model airplanes, or possibly a bomb.
All kind of electrical components, micro switches, batteries, wire cutters, wire strippers, wrenches, screwdrivers, everything that you can imagine.
In the kitchen, Fosdick issued what appeared to be a challenge.
He had lined up a series of tools on the kitchen table, and right next to these tools was a newspaper with Kim Wanger's obituary. To me, that was sending a very clear message. The message was, hey, I did it. Now you prove it.
Investigators collected the tools on the kitchen table for analysis. They also reviewed Fosdick's credit card receipts for the past 6 months, and one item stood out.
Dale Fosdick had purchased several packets of the Slingshot BB ammunition in early February and March, which was significant because this is the same type of Slingshot ammunition that was used in the manufacture of the bomb.
The handwriting analyst concluded that the signatures on the credit card receipts were indeed those of Mr. Fosdick.
Investigators
Usage of the item continues, it will become more and more obvious.
We have a manufacturing process that has to sharpen these blades, and then the use of them and the abuse of them adds accidental marks, which further separate them from their brothers in manufacturing.
O'Neill used Fosdick's wire cutters to strip the insulation from a sample piece of wire, then wrapped the ends in silver foil to improve the visibility under the microscope. He then compared the test wire to the wire recovered from the bomb site. At 50 times magnification, O'Neill could see that the microscopic striations in the rubber insulation lined up perfectly across both samples. Clear proof that Fosdick's wire cutters had been used in...
In fact, Dale Fosdick was guilty.
I watched the slides from the electron microscope and watched to see how he had lined everything up and had done this work and this painstaking, unbelievably difficult work, and was able to pin the hard evidence to this bomb, to this killer. And I thought, I've got some new heroes now. These guys did a fantastic job, and I was very, very impressed.
Dale Fosdick was convicted of first-degree murder and was sentenced to 55 years in prison.
Just the fact that he thought he could get away with it and they got him. That's what's so great. You can't outsmart science. That's for sure.
I guess he's not quite as bright as he thought he was.
Fosdick narrowly escaped the death penalty because a single juror voted against it.
This is a very dangerous human being. He never gave any kind of indication that he was sorry. I think the only thing that he was sorry about was that he got caught.